Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Yevamot daf Yud Tes. We are going to begin on Yud Tes Amud Aleph, about 12 lines from the top. Umi Shanu Le Rav Shimon. So does Rav Shimon really make a distinction? So let's first remind ourselves of what we saw in yesterday's daf. Starting off with the beginning of the Mishnah. It talks about you have two brothers, Reuven and Shimon, and Reuven dies. Reuven was childless, so his wife is a Shemeres Yavam, and V'yabim Masheni es Eishes Achiv. So Shimon ended up doing Yibum, which is a simple situation. However, then there's another brother who was born, Levi. Now, if afterwards Shimon dies, so certainly he's not obligated and is not to do the Yibum or Chalitza with Reuven's original wife, because that's Eishes Achiv Shul Hayabol Amo. Reuven and Levi were not alive at the same time. But even Shimon's wife, who was the tzara to her, the co-wife, also, because it's a tzara, he also will not. And that was the shita brought down in our Mishnah. Now, we mentioned that Rav Shimon is cholek in this situation, and not only does he disagree that this is not considered to be a case of Eishes Achiv Shul Hayabol Amo, but even in the Rishona, even in the first Mishnah, says Rav Oshia, that even if Levi is born before Shimon did Yibum, even then the din is, according to Rav Shimon, that he is able to marry the tzara, because again he doesn't hold that's a case of Eishes Achiv Shul Hayabol Amo. So we have again this opinion. Now the question is, why do we say such a din if Yibum wasn't done yet? So we said the reason why is because it's ki'ilu, like it was done. It's ke'kenusadami. It's ki'ilu because there was a zika for Shimon to do the Yibum. Even though Levi was born before, it doesn't make any difference. The din still is that it's ki'ilu like Levi was born afterwards. However, we said that the only time we may make this din, or this law of keknusadamya, is if there was only one brother, only Shimon, and he was the only one that could do it. So therefore, it's obviously he's the one who's going to do Yibum, so therefore the din is that he'll end up, it's ki'il like he did it. But if there's Shnei Yavamin, no. Since we don't know which brother is going to do Yibum, so we cannot say that it's ki'il like that she was already married, because we don't know which one she was going to marry. So this, now, with all that introduction, let's go back to the beginning of the Gemara. Mishanu le Rav Shimon. Does Rav Shimon really make a distinction regarding one or two? Vasanya klal Rav Shimon. He said the following rule: Kol shaha leida kodemes l'nesuin. If the leida, namely this third brother, Levi, was born before Shimon did the nesuin, so if he was born first, then lo chaletzes v'lo misyavemes. He says beferish that in that situation you do not do chalitz or yibum with the tzara, which clearly shows that it's not ki'ilu like she was born afterwards, that he was born afterwards. Clearly we don't say kenusa. Nisuin kaidim leida, that we see that if the marriage of Shimon came before Levi was born, chaletzes o misyavemes. So you can do chalitza yibum. So my love, biyabim echad. L'chayra, this chiluk is even if there's just one yabam. V'katani lo chaletzes lo misyavemes. And we still see that when it comes to Levi being born first, we don't say that he could do chalitza or yibum. We don't consider it ki'ilu like it was afterwards. So we see there is this distinction between before and after. L'chayra, that's when it comes to even with one yavam. Lo, b'shnei yavamin. When it comes to two yavamin, the truth is, you're right, there is a difference. Because there's two yavamin, if Levi was born before Shimon, or let's say the other, whoever, which is some other brother, did Yibum, we don't say it's kekenus hadam, because we don't know who it was. And therefore he doesn't do chalitz or Yibum. However, if let's say there was only one other brother, there's just Shimon in the picture, so we know he was definitely going to do Yibum. So therefore, because of that, when Shimon subsequently dies, so then Levi can do chalitza or yibum. So ihachi adatani nisun koidem koidmin leleida oy chalitza somas tevemes. Why does it mention the case of that Shimon was born, got married first, did yibum before Levi? Liflug v'lisim b'dida. Why don't you mention the case itself and say b'medim or more mishnei yavamin? Aval b'yavam echad o chalitza somas tevemes. If in fact there is a difference between 2 and 1 yavamin brothers, so then it should really specify. So where it says you're right, there really is a difference, but the reason why it doesn't mention is because Kula Mishnei Yevamot Kamairi. That whole case is just talking about with 2 brothers. And since it's talking about 2 brothers, therefore there's a distinction between if Levi was born before or after Shimon marries. However, you're right. If it would also be talking about 1 brother, then you're right, we would have made that distinction. And when it comes to 1 brother, we say that it doesn't matter if Levi was born before or after, it's ki'il like he was born afterwards. The elamai klola. So then what does it mean, this rule, says Rashi? Hoyel v'yavam echad afil leida kodemes l'nesuin shari. So we know that if there's only 1 brother in the picture, just Shimon, then even if Levi was born before Shimon got married, that we would still matur Levi to marry. So heichi matzil misli koyel shel leida kodemes l'nesuin lo yichaletzes v'omas yavemes. It sounds, since if it's only 1 brother, then he could do yibum and chalitza. So it sounds like kol in all situations. What do you mean in all situations? This is the only case. If it's 2 brothers, it almost sounds like maybe also in case of 1 brother, then it's the same. Fine. So furthermore, says the Gemara, Meisiv Rav Oishia. Rav Oishia asked another question. Gimel Achan, you have 3 brothers. Shnai mehem nesuin l'shtei achayos. So Reuben and Shimon married 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah. O Isha Ubita, or let's say one of them married a mother and the other one married the daughter. O Isha Ubas Bita, or one married the mother, a woman, and the other one married her granddaughter. O Isha Ubas Bina, or again the same thing, her son's daughter. So Hari Elu Choltzos Lumas Yevamos. Let's say they both died. Both of these men died. So what do we do in this situation? Again, there is this link between these 2 women. So the din is, this 3rd brother will do chalitza, but he will not do yibum. What does that mean? Says Rashi, Imesu hanasuin es hakrovos. If the ones who were married to these relatives, these 2 women who are related, those 2 men died, so both of those related women are now shomeres yavam to Levi, this 3rd brother. He will only do chalitza v'omas yavamos, but he doesn't do yibum. Why? Says Rashi, the problem is that if you do yibum, so that means you are automatically making the other one not shaykh to even do chalitza. Rav Shimon poiter. So Rav Shimon paters. What does that mean? Af min ha-chalitza. He says you don't have to do anything. You don't even have to do chalitza in this case. As we'll see what that's referring to. If you want to tell me that Reb Shimon holds this din, that once there is a zika, it's keilu like they're already married, so liyavin l'kamaisa, so we should say that he should do yibum for the 1st brother that died, since 1 brother died first, so there is a zika, like a marriage, and this is like a case of yibum echad, since there's only Levi could marry her, because Shimon was married to the Karov, but the pater idoch, and the other one's pater. So l'chor, that's what we would say. So l'chor, it's a kasha, because if you hold kanusa dami, so 1 brother died, once Reuven died, and Shimon, let's say, dies a week later, but in the meanwhile, this 1 woman was has a zika dafka only to Levi, and it's ke'ilu kanusa damya. It's like they're already married, so he should be able to do yibum with her, and then the other woman who's a karab will be potter. So Amar Amram, my poter nami poter b'shniya. It means that he can potter with the 2nd one. That's precisely what it means. That the 2nd woman is going to be potter from chalitza, not the 1st one. The 1st one, right? You can do yibum, but the 2nd one does not do chalitza because it's kanusa damya. I was signed your shimon poiter b'shneihen. It says he's potter from both of them. So why would you be potter from the 1st one? It was kanusa. You should have done yibum with her. So maraba shnia shebezug zeh v'shnia shebezug zeh. What it means, it's shnia in this pair and shnia in this pair. Says Rashi, im hayu shloisha achen. let's say it's talking about where there's three brothers. Shnai mehen nesuin shtei achayos. Again, Reuven and Shimon are married to Rachel and Leah, two brothers, two sisters. The Isha ubita ubetu shneihem, and they died. V'naflu lifnei hashlishi, and they fell to this third brother. In other words, there's four women in this situation. So you had the situation of two sisters, and you also had uvitu shtei achayos, and then you had the Isha uvita. So you had all these relatives, umesu shneihem, and then both brothers died. So these four women fall to Levi. Achas min harishonos misyavemes, ushtayim hachronos paturos. The chadim min harishonos chashuva kekanusa, umisyavemes, v'hashnim paturos achas mishum erba, davi minayu min harishonos. Fine. So he would do yibum, you're right, with the first one, but because of the relationship to the other ones, so therefore he'd be patur from the others. So Katoi Rava, so Rava had made a mistake. Be arba zuge, with regard to four pairs. Chada de o katani. It says o, says Rashi. Salvadaitach the Rava de Mayri kishanafel kul nefnei yavam echad. That which we said that they all fell into one person, that is difficult to understand because O katani, says Rashi. Since it says O, alma lav kulu b'chad beisa askinan. It doesn't sound like it's talking about with regard to one. It sounds like they were separated. V'od Rav Shimon poiter ba'arbatan miboile. It should say that he paters with the four. The fact that we're talking about this situation should again be more specific. That there were four women, and again the two men died, and then they all fell to Levi. So you're right. He should mention that there was actually four, not that there was two. So l'chara, it doesn't sound like that was the situation. Oh, Tanya Rav Shimon poiter b'shnein. We know Rav Shimon says he paters both brothers' wives. Mina chalitza mina yibam. Shnever v'isha al chosel osika chosrar. B'shoshan asasor zulazu. It's only when they're co-wives to one another. Lo yehel l'chol l'kuchen afil b'achs mehen. The din is that you don't marry even one of them. Says Rashi, Alma Tervayu Paturi. So according to this, we see, according to him, Beferish, that they're both pater. But again, if he holds Kikanusa Damya, then L'chara, the first one, we should say that they're completely pater. The first one should be Yibum, because first brother died, and then only afterwards the second brother died. So you should, Kikanusa Damya, we should say that the first one you should do Yibum with. So how do we understand this? You're right. If Reuven and Shimon died at separate times, you're right. Then Reuven's wife, who's the Shemer Shavam, since we hold K'nus Adam according to Rav Shimon, he would actually have married her. However, this is why Rav Shimon says he doesn't marry either Reuven or Shimon's wife, because they happen to have died at the same moment, and therefore both Reuven and Shimon's wife were zokuk to him at the same moment. And since they were sisters, the problem is that if you do yibum with one, then you can't do chalitza with the other, and therefore that's why he paters. Shimon Savar Rav Yosef Gulid Yomer Efshel Samseim. According to Rav Shimon, he holds that Efshel Samseim, that a person, it's possible that it could have happened at the precise exact second. So a tragedy happened, and they both died at the same moment. So actually, Samsein. It's fine. So all of this was according to the Shita of Rav Oshia. Rav Oshia again said that it doesn't matter, even the Mishnah Rishona, it doesn't matter if even in the situation where Levi is born before Shimon did Yibum, Rav Shimon's Cholach there as well. However, Papa says no, and we see that there is a distinction of when Levi is born, before or after Shimon's Yibum, and the din will change. Papa Omer beyibim v'achach noilad polig Rav Shimon. I only hold that Rav Shimon disagrees in the situation where Shimon first did Yibum and then only afterwards Levi was born. That had to have been the order. However, but no v'achach Yibum lo polig. However, if let's say Levi was born, which is our Mishnah Rishona, and then only afterwards Shimon did Yibum, so the din is we don't argue, because l'chara he holds that he does not hold k'kanus adamya. The fact is that since Shimon only did Yibum after Levi was born, so therefore even he will agree to the sheet of the Tanakama that in this situation, no, nothing is done. Now, for both of them, Rabbanan need. V'lo avzu katani. As we mentioned before, we said, the Mishnah Rishon, Mishnah Achrona is the Hodeach Koichen to show the strength of each one. So how come if the Rabbanan agree, so it's an avzu v'lo izu koimer. So Rav Shim, according to the Rabbanan, that in both situations, in other words, even in a situation where Levi was born, he was born after Shimon did Yibum, still the Rabbanan would say that Chalitza and Yibum is not done. V'luzu avzu katani. So Tani was the Rav Papa. Tiyuf the Rabbi Ishia. We're going to see that we have support to this concept of making a distinction in the machlokas, if there's a machlokas, or Shimon Tanakama, whether or not Levi was born before or after the Yibum. Shnei achen ba'oyom echad. You have two brothers at the same time, Reuven and Shimon. Umeis echem mehen, Reuven died below Vlad. He had no kids. V'yom hasheni. So Shimon got up. Hasheni hazeh lasos maimer. Now he didn't do Yibum, but instead Shimon was about to do Maimer. B'yavimtai. However, v'lo hispik lasos b'Maimer, he didn't have enough time to do Maimer. Ad shenoyel lo ach. So what happened? Levi ended up getting born. Now Levi was therefore born after Reuben died. So certainly he is l'hai b'lamai, but he was born before Shimon did Maimer. Umeis, and then Shimon dies. So what's the status of this Shomer Shavim? Harishoni yatzim yishomer shesachos shalai b'lamo. So Reuven's wife, who again Shimon didn't end up doing anything, he was going to do Maimer Hispik, but he died before he had a chance. So certainly Levi cannot do Yibum or anything with her because Reuven and Levi were not in the same world at the same time. Ushnia, however, when it comes to the second one, namely Shimon's wife, he's allowed to do chalitza or yibum because Levi was born before Shimon died. Also, Maimer. Let's say Shimon Taka did Maimer, and only afterwards Levi was born. Oshenodol ach. Let's say Levi was born Maimer, or the other way around, and he did Maimer Umeis, and then he dies. So in all these situations, certainly Reuben's wife there's nothing to talk about. She definitely is off. The question is what is there a connection like to a tzara? Now in this situation, the situation before she was not really the tzara because nothing was done. That's why Levi was able to do chalitz or yibum to Shimon's wife, because Shimon's wife was really not a tzara to Reuven's wife because he never did anything yet. However, this is a case where Maimer was performed. So the din is, we say that when it comes to Shimon's wife, he has to at least do chalitza. He doesn't do yibum, at least does chalitza. Because the fact that Maimer was done, so there is this element of a tsaras ereva. However, we still require him to do chalitza. Why? Says Rashi, chaletzes doi olam Maimer l'shavia tsaras ereva l'mepik below klum. That Maimer is not so strong that it's considered tsaras ereva that she just leaves completely, because Maimer is only a din derabanan. It's not a deraisa. That's only with yibum. Maimer is like a kedusha derabanan. So since that's only like a rabbinic marriage, so therefore we do require him to do chalitza with her. So shnei chalitza is omis yavemas. As we continue to test Amud Beis. Okay. Before we continue, Andrew, let's just finish this thought. Rav Shimon Omer bi'asa o chalitzasa shel achas mehem poiteres sarasa. Bia or chalitza with one of them will pater the co-wife. What does that mean? So mefarish l'kaimei. It's going to be explained later on. Says Rashi. Di'asa ba Maimer. So Shimon did Maimer with her. V'achach noyel lo ach, and then Levi was born. Koi. Umishum deksaver Maimer safik kaina safik enu kaina. So he says that when it comes to Maimer, it's a question whether that's actually a kinyan. Kinyan il, and Mefarish Rav Shimon v'Azal. This is going to be explained a little later on. So again, this is talking specifically in a case where there was mimer done. So in that situation, poiteris sorasa. So if bia or chalitza was done, it'll pata the other one. Okay, we'll get to that a little bit more of an explanation as we continue. Now cholitz labalas mimer lo niftarat sara. Let's say the balas mimer, this the person who did mimer ended up doing chalitza lo niftarat sara. That will not pater the co-wife, says Rashi. Koloimer hadik amina bi asa o chaletzas. That which you said, bia or chalitza shel achs mehem poiter sarasa. What does that mean? Well, pater the other woman. Kagon she chayletz o miyavim l'shniya. That you ended up doing chalitza or yibum with the second woman. Berishona patura. And once that's done, that paters the first one. Why? If let's say mimer actually does anything, in that case, havile yibum, ubasaif noila. That's considered like yibum was done because mimer is if it's like a yibum, so it's yibum first, and then afterwards Levi was born. Even the first one is completely mutter. Rav Shimon, or Rav Shimon, of a chalitza the idach miftara. So the chalitza, the other one will pater. The mimer kikanusa. Because mimer, if it's like yibum, it's knusa, like they were married. Mimer lo kani, if mimer actually doesn't do anything, hari shapri yavim l'shniya, then it makes sense doing yibum to the second one. The eishes achav shahay ba'lomohi ve'enot saras erva. Because if it was mimer really didn't do anything, so then this woman who was the Eisha Sachav Shalei Ba'alomo was not really married to you because Mimer didn't accomplish anything, and therefore his wife is not considered to be Tsaras Ereva, and therefore because of that, so that one for sure. You should do chalitza to the one who did Mimer. She Rishayna will niftarat Sarah. We're not going to pater her. The Dilma Mimer loikani, because maybe again Mimer didn't do anything. Okay. Weiter. So then it says as follows. Back in the Gemara. Kansa umes. Let's say that Shimon marries her, does Yibam, has Bia, and then afterwards Shimon dies. And then Levi is born. Or let's say that Levi is born and then afterwards Shimon marries, Umes, and then Shimon dies. Shtain Paturos min hachalitza min yibum. In that situation, everyone's part from chalitza and yibum. So we see Rav Shimon doesn't argue. So this is actually a proof to the shita of Rav Papa. It doesn't make any difference. He says beferish, if in the situation of shenoylad lo ach ve'achach kansa, that if Levi was born and then the marriage took place, so they're pater min hachalitza min hayibum, which is not what Rav Shimon said according to the shita of Rav Oshia. Okay, so that's the raya. Kansa b'noy lo ach. Let's say again Shimon married her b'noy lo ach, and then afterwards Levi was born v'achach meis, and then Shimon dies. Shnei paturas min hachalitza min hayibum. Diva Rav Meir. Rav Shimon oimer hoyel ubal matzas beheter, since she came beheter v'lo omda olav sha'achas be'isser. There was not a moment of isser. Miyavim le'ez mehem shiyirtza cholitz le'ez mehem shiyirtza. He can do chalitza or yibum to whomever he wants. Ha b'baba de seifa l'man katanila. What is this latter case? Ilim l'ramer katanila. If it was ramer, that's establishing the statement. Let's see. Lo shtani l'ramer ben yibim v'achach nolad ben nolad v'achach yibim. So he doesn't make a distinction between whether Levi was born before or afterwards. If that's the case, it would have just been better just to have it all inclusive. So it's not like the sheet of him. Elolav Rav Shimon. It must be that this case is Rav Shimon. Again, only time the Rav Papa argues if Shimon first did Yibum and then only afterwards Levi was born, whether or not he could do Chalitz or Yibum, Levi, or whatever. However, if Shimon was first, if Levi was born first, and then only afterwards Shimon did Yibum. So in that case, he doesn't argue because again, he doesn't hold Kanusa Damya, and therefore the din is that it's Be'isr, and because of that, we again see clearly, unlike Rabbi Oshia, that the din is like Rav Papa, that there is a chiluk only when it comes to a situation where Shimon did Yibum first. But if Levi was born first and then Shimon did Yibum, then the din is that he would pata the Sarah, even according to Rav Shimon. Omer Mar. Amar Hasheni Lasos Marmer. Okay, let's stop 1 second. Now let's see question 9. Shnei Yevamos. Mishnei Batim. 2 Yevamos from 2 different houses, right? Shenaflu Lifnei Acha Shlishi. Right? So you have Reuben and Shimon that die. So their 2 wives are now falling to Levi. Vehem Achayais. And their sisters, Rachel and Leah. Ma dinam chalitza liyibum. What's the din about chalitza or yibum? So he says like this: according to the Rabbanan, you do chalitza, but you don't do yibum, because you can't do yibum on one of them because then it's karayva saki kasai. Rav Shimon poiteres av min hachalitza. He says you're completely pater entirely. You don't even need to do chalitza in that situation. Okay, weiter. Omar. Amar Hasheni Lasos Maimer Be'avim Tavoi Hismik Lasos Maimer Be'avim Tavad Shenayel Doi Achumes. So again, the cases we saw previously, that Shimon was going to do Maimer, because again, Reuben died, so Shimon was going to do Maimer, and he didn't have a chance to do so, and Levi was born, and then Shimon died. So Certainly that woman who was Reuben's wife, Levi does not marry her because Reuben and Levi were not alive at the same time. But Shimon's wife, he could do chalitza or yibum because there is no connection. It's not a tsaras ereva. So my omad my lo hispik. What does that mean? What does it mean? He was really planning on doing it. What's the difference? If he didn't do it, he didn't do it. What does this mean? El alman medaita. It means that it was done with consent. Lo hispik medaita. Ela bal korcha. Udaloy karebi. In other words, he really did mimer, but he did mimer against her will. And it's not like the Shita Rabbi. The Sanya. If a person does yibum without her consent, Rabbi Oimer Kana, Kana. So this is not like Rabbi, because Rabbi holds it's a good kinyan. And since it's a kinyan, so therefore the din would be it's like they're married, because mimer works, even Bal Karcha. And if it works Bal Karcha, then that's a Saras Erva. And he wouldn't just be able to do Yibum with her anymore, because it's Saras Erva. However, Chachamim Oimer Lo Kanan, since he did it, but it wasn't done properly, so therefore it's like they were not married. And that's the reason why Levi could now do Chalit or Yibum, according to, again, this Shita. So my time to Rabbi. So just now as a sidebar, we have this machlokas, whether mimer must be done with her consent or even against her will. So the reason why Rabbi says it's kind of even against her will, Garma Mabia Diavama. That it doesn't make a difference. The fact is, Yibum, there is this direct connection to the woman, and therefore it's something which is against her will in the fact that it's already like you're connected to her. So therefore, that's why by Yibum is done Bal Karcha, and therefore the Kedushin, so to speak, of Yibum, which is Maimer, is also able to be Bal Karcha. Rabbanan Gami Kedushin. The Alma. Ma Kedushin, the Alma Madaita, Kedushin, the Alma Madaita. Because this is, Maimer is with Kedushi Kesef, which is the same thing with regular Kedushin, when you just marry a woman outright. So that has to be done with her consent. So too, because we learn out from Kedushin the Alma, that's the same thing. So, so what's the Machlokas? So Marsa B'mila Diavama Mili Diavama Havalamelef. Better to connect Yibum to Yibum, or Yibum to Maimer. Fine. Also, so what happened? Let's say Shimon actually did Maimer properly, and afterwards Levi is born. So the question is Maimer like they're married? So it's like Shimon did everything he did, and then only afterwards Levi was born. Or let's say the other way around, Levi was born and then he did Maimer. Umes. And then Shimon dies. So again, every situation, the first wife, there's nothing to talk about because Reuben and Levi were not alive at the same time. However, the question is always about the Shnia. According to the Shita, you should still do chalitza. Why do you do chalitza? Because even though Maimer was done, so that's strong enough that you're not going to be able to do Yibum. But this element of Tsaras Erev is only strong enough that we're going to say, you know what, it's not completely, she can go completely free, because it was only like a Kedusha D'Rabbanan. And therefore, you at least have to do chalitza. Rav Shimon says, regarding to the second wife, Biyasa o chalitzasa shel achas mehem poiteres sarasa. The bia, or the chalitza of one of them will pater the tzara. Rav Shimon ahei. What's he talking about? Hey koi. Ilema anoyel ach. Is he talking about the case where Levi was born? The Yaakov Asaba Maimer, then Shimon did Maimer. Amrit benod will say Yibin lo pog Rav Shimon. I thought in that case Rav Shimon doesn't argue, and he holds in that situation you don't do chalitza. El Asaba Maimer v'Yaakov anoyel ach. It must be the other way around. That Shimon did Maimer first, and then Levi was born. So in that case, Cholotz lo balos Maimer lo nifter et tzara. So he said you do chalitza, and the balos Maimer you can do chalitza with on her, the one that you did with Maimer was with. When nifter et tzara, that will not pater the tzara. My time and misham dehavi tzara vadai, because the tzara definitely is falling to Levi. Ubalos Maimer suffix, and this woman who did Maimer is just a suffix. Ve'in suffix mitzvah vadai. Yosef Rav Menashe bar Zvid Kamei Rav Huna v'Yosef v'Kaimer my time to Rav Shimon. What is the reason of Rav Shimon? So in my time to Rav Shimon, Kedi Amar Taima, we said before, Hoyel Uba Matzah Beheter. Since we find that she was Beheter, namely that she was already married to Shimon, and then only afterwards Levi was born. There's never a moment of Isser. So what do you mean? What's the opinion of Rav Shimon? It's beferish. My time of the Rabbanon. Well, why do the Rabbanon say opposite like that? So Omer Kra, the pasuk says, "O kachal lo yul isha v'yimma adayin yibumim rishonim uleha." That there's still this original connection to the original woman, and therefore that's the reason why the Rabbanon are more strict when it comes to the situation. That even though, says Rashi, Afal Gav Shikansa, even though Shimon married her, right, and then afterwards Levi was born, still Kri Yevamot. She's still considered to have a name of a Yevamot, and therefore Levi will still not need to do chalitza with her according to the Shita of the Rabbanon in that circumstance, because she's still considered to be on a certain level like a Yevamot, and that's Eishes Lakush Hoya B'Olamo. Ella hadit nan that we learned. We said kansa hari ishto the whole davar. We said that once yibum is performed, we say that she has the same halachic status of any other woman, even though again she was only married because of this whole notion of yibum. But nonetheless, she's considered ki'ishto chol davar. Yom Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina Malam, and it comes to teach us as we continue Chalaman Aleph, shemigarsha beget umak zira. So that there's a din that if at some point you want to divorce the woman that you did yibum with, you can, and you don't do chalitza, all you need to do is give a get. Also machzira, there, as we saw before, when it comes to machzir. So if, let's say, you would divorce her, so the din is that you actually have the ability to remarry her. And where you don't, even though there is this element of machzir, maybe this heter of remarrying your wife, assuming, of course, she'd married on the interim, is only in a situation, maybe when it's a normal situation. But this is a case of Eishes Ach, this is your brother's wife, so maybe it was only the original heter was allowing you to do Yibum, but once you divorce her, you can't remarry her. No, we still say she's an Isha Chol Davar. So Hasem Nami Lema V'Yimma, why do we say V'Yimma? Adayin Yibumim Arishanim Aleha, that she's still considered like a Yibum, a Yavama, V'Tiboy Chalitza. So why don't we say that you should still do chalitza if we're in fact calling her a yibum strong enough? That's the reason why the Rabbanan say there's shita going against Rosh Shimon. So then why don't we say that she should also have to do chalitza and not give a get? You took her for a wife. Since you did that, it's like she's your wife. Oh, 1 second. So why don't we say the same thing when it comes to, again, Levi having to do chalitza with her, etc., this whole situation? No, hakasa brach one of yimma. No, she's still like a Yevama. So one second, Umar Ra'isa. How could sometimes you say that she's like a regular wife, that you don't need to do chalitza if you decide to divorce her? But yet, when it comes to this whole situation of Eshes Achshel Ba'olamo and Shimon who marries her, etc., the din that Levi would not do chalitza because she's still considered to be like a Yevama. But why? Isn't she considered like an Ishal Holdabar? Gemara says like this: Mistabra Shadi Hatera Shadi Isura Asura. They should put the heter by the heter. Says Rashi, Lamedrish Lakacha, the medrash of taking her, the Loboy Chalitza, which is a heter, you can take her, is a heter. The cool mills of a heter could go on Miyavim Eshesach. The whole notion of being able to marry Eshesach is a heter. And put the Isser of a Yima, Dain Yivum Aleha, which is stringency on the Isser, Hechad Ikasad Isser, Kamo the Eshesach Shalei Balamo. So put the Isser by the Isser, put the Heter by the Heter. And therefore, that's the reason why. There is an element of Heter. There's a pasuk which shows an Isser. So we put the Heter by the Heter and the Isser by the Isser. Fine. Rav Shimon, so according to him, that again, he says, well, Shimon married her first, did Yibam first, and then Levi was born. So she was always beheter. So therefore, according to him, that chalitza will be done. El miyata achoso miimo. If let's say you have a sister from your mother's side, so your mother's a sister from your mother's side, she's your half sister. Shenasa ochiv mi'aviv, and she ended up marrying your brother from your father's side. So she's your half sister, but the other person is your half brother, but the half sister and half brother are not really related. So they're allowed to get married to each other. And then afterwards, another brother is born, umes, and then this man dies. So tisyavim, we should say that this other brother should be able to do yibum. Hoyel ubal matzah beheter. He found her beheter. Isra achosel. So question: Isra achosel hechan ozel. Hachinami Isra achiv shulhay beloma hechan ozel. You don't say such a thing, so you should say the same thing. Why would the Rav Shimon say that you could simply do chalitza? But there's still this element of Ashes Achiv Shahaya Bolamo. So why would we say that Levi is able to do chalitza with her? So your answers, Hi Isura de Leisle Hatera, Hi Isura de Isle Hatera. There's an Isser where there is no heter, namely the situation of the two half sister, half brother. But this is a situation where there is a heter. Says Rashi. Isur de achaiso leisle heter. The isur of your sister, there's no heter. But isur eshes ach isle heter, right? Kashen lo banim. As we know, the whole element of yibum. There is an element that sometimes, even though it's an erva, sometimes it's okay. Hilchach. Kishemeshim rishon, when Reuven died, lo banim, to paka isuro legabi sheni. So at that moment, Vanasa, that when Shimon married her, that issur's gone. The shlishi mekayach sheni ba. The very important element of Rashi, which we conclude with, that Levi is able to do this because it's not connected anymore to Reuven. She's now connected to Shimon. We'll stop here. Let's see a couple more questions. Question 10. Shnei achin ba'oyel mechad. So you have two brothers, Reuben and Shimon. Umeis achin mehem b'lo Vlad. And one of them dies without a child. Reuben dies. V'olmad hasheni lasos maimer bi'avim tavo hispek lasos bo maimer ad shenolu ach. What is that coming to tell us? So Pirish means that he did mimer, right? However, what does that mean? I didn't underline this. This is referring to that was done balkarcha. Kamash will end in mimer balkarcha kind of feel b'mixus. It doesn't accomplish anything. Okay. TA 2, which I may have done already. Shnei achim umeis echamehen. You have two brothers, and one of them died. V'yasab hasheni mimer. So Shimon did mimer. V'yachach noyel lehem ach. And then afterwards Levi was born. Umeis hasheni. And then Shimon dies. Him balas hamimer o eshos hasheni misyavemus Rav Shimon madua. So the question is, what is the status of this woman? So the first one, again, we say is eshos hakadosh b'olamo. Right. However, when the balas, that's the balas hamimer. We don't do yibum. The im mimer enu kaina because if Mimer doesn't do anything, Havile Eishas Ish Shel Haybalamo. So that's the reason why he doesn't do anything with her. The Eishas Hasheni Misyavemes Mamanavshach. He will actually allow you to do, as we saw in this Rashi, he will allow that you're able to do Mimer, actually you'll have to do Yibam rather, Mamanavshach, on the Tsar. Why? The E-Mimer Kani, if the Mimer worked for the first one, Havile Yom Rachach Noilad, which is okay, according to Rav Shimon, because you're allowed to, she was beheter. The Mimer Lo Kani Hari'enu Tsar Rishayna, then she was not considered to be a Tsara. So therefore, that's the reason why Mamanavshach, according to Rav Shimon, since Levi was born after the Mimer, so therefore he would actually be able to do even Yibum with the second one. Okay. TB4. Shnei achim be'oilam. Amad hasheni lasos Mimer b'lo hispik lemele misnei amad b'lo hispik my kamashmon. So it seems like the same question. TB4. Amad medait b'lo hispik medait el balkarcha v'kamashmon kechachamim de Mimer balkarchach eno klum. Adkan.